Welcome to Scaling Impact, where we decode how entrepreneurs are harnessing the power of the UN Sustainable Development Goals to create remarkable and impactful businesses that drive transformation on a global and local human scale. We explore how sustainability is elevating our human consciousness and catalyzing us to create within constraints. We decipher why now is the biggest entrepreneurial opportunity since the dawn of industrialization and what leaders and entrepreneurs can do to harness the winds of change. I'm Anders Sorman-Nielsen, global futurist, EO Sydney Impact Champion and father, and your co-host with Lisa Andrews for Scaling Impact. Today on Scaling Impact, I speak with Rob Caslick, founder of Too Good Company, a social enterprise on a mission to employ and empower women who have a lived experience of domestic violence or other traumas. Too Good Company sells food designed by chefs like Neil Perry, Kylie Kwong, and Ben Shewry, and products designed by companies like Jack & Jack and Maison Balzac. Too Good began 10 years ago as an ad hoc King's Cross cookout for the area's less fortunate. They operate a buy one, give one business model, and Rob is the walking, breathing definition of the 3 Ps of people, planet, and profit. This episode is a deep dive into UN Sustainable Development Goal number 1, ending poverty. Tune in as we unearth Rob's contrarian views and as he debunks business myths and how the UN SDGs catalyse his creativity so that he can scale impact. Thanks, Rob.
Anders, thank you for having me on my show.
Mate, I'm sure lots of EOers in Sydney, Asia Pac, around the world are super curious what you're doing to scale your impact around the world. And of course, this is the show where EOers are catalyzing and utilizing the UN Sustainable Development Goals to do really cool, really humane, really worthwhile stuff. So first of all, what is Too Good? And tell us a little bit about the business model.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. So Too Good's a social enterprise. We derive most of our revenue through trade, through business. We have 2 main streams, food and things. We employ a head chef and sous chefs and have a kitchen team, but the majority of our kitchen team are made up of women who are at high risk of homelessness or homeless and living in women's shelters. So primarily we sell catering and food to corporate Australia, and then we also donate food to women's shelters mainly across New South Wales, but we have gone national with some food deliveries. We started out purely as a buy one, give one. So the history of Too Good really came about as a soup kitchen. We started as a soup kitchen when I was an engineer in building services. And we really kind of asked the question, how do we have more social impact with the least impact on the earth? And that's kind of been at our core. And by continuing to ask that question, we've grown our impact by donating thousands of meals, employing many homeless women and getting them back into community. And also our second stream is good things. And so while food is great, it's not really a high profit margin for us. So we also sell hand soap and hand lotion and body wash, body lotion mainly into B2B, and use those profits to drive into our programs.
I'm curious just to see how you found this purpose. I know you have a background in the Defence Force, and then as an engineer, and now you're in the fine dining / social enterprise philanthropic space. Fascinating journey.
Yeah, I guess community and has always been at my core, and working with walking with people who have done it tough. And ever since uni, I used to kind of volunteer my time. And then when I was an engineer, in fact, even while I was in the Navy, I still volunteered and set up a soup kitchen in King's Cross. And it was always kind of like, busy world, everything's going on, but it was my kind of little happy pill each week. We'd go up to the cross, and actually that day we used to wheel our barbecue and put on a big, like a barbecue for people doing it tough in the cross. And then, I just loved it, mate. It's just something that kind of I felt amazing doing, and I just wanted to continue, but I never really understood how I was going to actually, pay myself a wage by giving out food. And so, continuing as we started to do the soup kitchen a bit more, we actually turned it into an organic soup kitchen, not to be fancy or, hips or anything like that. It was literally just to provide clean food. We noticed from the barbecue that a lot of people were coming on heavy recreational drugs or medicinal drugs. And so we said, let's just provide food that's as clean as possible. And so we launched this organic soup kitchen in the King's Cross. And what was beautiful, I mean, again, by this stage, I was working in construction as an engineer. And again, like everyone, being busy, I guess. But that kind of what kept coming me back was I always remember there's a tennis courts close to where the soup kitchen was. And this guy called Steve, he came to dinner one night. And he said, Rob, do you know what I love about this place? And I said, no, Steve, tell me. I was actually sharing a meal with Steve. And he said, for 2 hours each week, I don't feel homeless. And for me, that was a kind of core of what we're trying to do. And that we're not about providing food or feeding people. It's really about creating this place of dignity and respect and love. And if we can somehow kind of scale that, wouldn't it be, amazing to be able to do? And that was kind of my driver, Steve's message around, coming together around the table. And what we found out by serving, organic food or kind of clean food, you actually do more than serve. You in fact share food, and when you kind of provide a meal that you would eat yourself, it's more of a sharing of a food, and that was kind of the small nuance that we were doing, and it was really working within building community. And so when the time came about, how do we kind of scale this without asking for money? It was a traditional soup kitchen where I have to raise funds to give out food. And if I want to give out more food, I'll just have to raise more funds. And so I love, one of the great things about working this game, you have access to amazing people. And at the time I kind of emailed Droga5, which was an amazing advertising agency in Darlinghurst, actually not too far. And they come back and said, yeah, we're doing this. We're on, let's partner. And so they come up with the name Too Good. They put this really cool, a couple of 2-minute kind of clip around what we're doing and why we're doing. In fact, we had one of our volunteers, her dad is Greg Doyle. And Greg Doyle, for those who know, it was he had at the time the best highest rated restaurant in Australia, Pier Restaurant down in Rose Bay. And so he designed these meals for us. And I thought, no, this is going to go crazy. We've got Droga5, we've got Australia's best chef. My engineer, I set up Too Good with another engineer, and we kind of cooked all the weekend before getting ready to this launch. And we're just kind of trying to wheel in all of our engineering friends and architects friends. So we launched Too Good. And I think it bombed, right? I think we only sold like 6 soups that first week. And I thought, what's going on here? And so anyway, I had these sort of 6 soups to donate because we had the buy one, give one model. And so if I took these to the soup kitchen, they're going to laugh at me. So I went up to a women's shelter in King's Cross and knocked on the door. And there was this guy carrying 6 jars of soup at the front door. And I said, my name's Rob. We gave her the spiel, told her about Greg Doyle. She goes, who's Greg Doyle? I was like, he's a fancy chef. And they took these soups. And the rest is history. A few days later, a couple of other women's shelters actually said, hey, we want some of those soups that you gave the shelter up the road. And when the third one kind of contacted us, we thought, well, actually, what's going on here? And I went on to LinkedIn and looked up this lady, and she was a domestic violence consultant, because although, domestic violence is a huge issue in Australia, I, to my knowledge, no one in my family had experience. So I didn't really know what was happening. And Lisa gave me some really interesting tips. I told her the story. But the next day she wrote me this letter. And in that letter, she talked about herself going through 7 years of quite horrendous physical and emotional abuse, and ended up in a women's shelter in North Sydney. But for her, it wasn't the fact that, she was given a toiletry set. It was the fact that someone had actually given her a toiletry set that was wrapped in cellophane and tied this really beautiful, neat bow, and that they'd gone to the effort of neatening the ends of that bow, really demonstrated to Lisa that she was worthy of love and respect. And so if that's really where our core social impact is, that's where, how do we have more social impact with least impact on the earth? If that's our cohort that we can have more impact with, and let's kind of start focusing on women and women's shelters. And so then as we, it was also the same time the Australian of the Year was a fierce supporter of women's services and domestic violence, in fact. And it really kind of, we got the start of the wave, and it really, all these corporates started to jump on and get behind us. And I thought, well, actually, as we started to sell quite a few more, maybe there's something in this. And I said, well, actually, I'll go part-time engineering, part-time too good, and kind of failed at both. And then so I thought, back to this is where my heart is. I'm going to give this a good shot. And so I resigned from engineering and dived in. And fortunately, the engineering certificate's in the back pocket, and I haven't had to go. I've dusted it off a few times over the last couple of years, that's for sure. But I haven't had to go back there. So yeah, and things are going quite well.
So many, goosebump moments in that description and that journey. And thank you for taking us down, memory lane and then up to the present moment. I guess, within an EO context, people sort of live by the EBITDA and, profit maximization and scale and growth. And, we read the Mike Michalowicz's The Profit First of the world. And at the same time, there seems to be this sort of zeitgeist shift in business at the moment, where the 3 Ps of people, planet, and profit are meant to coexist. We've got the likes of Larry Fink at BlackRock really saying that, the next 1,000 unicorns are going to come from sustainable businesses. They're not going to be, the search engines or the social media companies of the world, but people really harnessing the UN Sustainable Development Goals and I guess the creativity with doing more by utilizing less, and of course, having a great impact on the world and on humans. And there's so much in your story that sort of ties into that. And I guess as a futurist, I can't but help to think that, hey, Rob's totally on trend. But this is, of course, not why you did this, right?
No, 100%. And we've also seen a shift, right? So when we were first starting, we were getting a lot of people kind of contact us. We want to get involved. We want to get my organization involved. And typically, the rise of the CSR department was starting to happen more. And it was more driven by the millennials wanting to work for organizations that were doing good. Fast forward to now, we're working with lots of the larger property companies, and they're able to access more funds in their developments, providing that can demonstrate they are doing good within that community. And so it's been a big shift from bottom up first. Before Larry Fink was making his billions of dollars or all the other things, now it's certainly driven from the top down, and then that there's everyone's realizing that there's also going to be a large shift of super funds going into more of these investments that are actually seen to be doing good. And so, yeah, we've really seen a shift over the last even 5 years from bottom up to now. Investment level saying we certainly want to see returns, that there's no questions there, but we certainly want to see positive social impact and positive environmental impact. And certainly even the last 2 years, ESG primarily has been much more about environment, sustainability and the environment, and rightly so, it's great. But we're certainly in the last 2 years, and in particular through COVID, a lack of connection to community, Black Lives Matter, and a number of other important kind of social initiatives happening. Business is also really starting to look at, what is the S in ESG? So how do we kind of make sure we're also looking at the community, and how do we as an organization connect to local community?
You guys started with this very sort of purpose-led, why, mission. You're making a huge impact, obviously, on helping particularly women suffering from domestic abuse, domestic violence. You're able to, in a very, innovative and entrepreneurial fashion, kind of synergistically fix a lot of issues all at once, or at least you're on the path to helping, right? So not only is you're looking after and giving that sense of humanity and respect and human recognition of the victims of domestic abuse, but also people who are homeless. At the same time, you're employing and retraining some of these people who've had a very, very tough life. And you're also able to, of course, as the founders, also build a business out of it. What do you say to entrepreneurs that maybe don't have that sense of, purpose or mission sort of baked in from day one? Maybe they're running an organization that's 15, 20 years old, and they're kind of going, hey, I'm in construction, or I'm in management consulting, or I'm running a design agency. How can they kind of bake this purpose in, whether it's buy one, give one, or what other kind of models are there around this that people should be thinking about?
So, in the first instance, partnership, right? So we partner with advertising agencies. We're punching above our weight, but primarily because we've got great partners and people, and we partner with less, but partner deeply. So certainly the first instance is finding good partnerships. If you're a builder, we did an amazing project last year, or I say we, but I just introduced builders with a women's shelter and a designer, and they kind of created a women's shelter. And it was, not that much time, but there's certainly opportunities with whatever skills you have to build some kind of purpose within your organization. It's just about kind of partnering well and working out, what you would like to commit to something like this. There are certainly also a lot of research out there to suggest building purpose within is actually profitable for your organization, making sure that people feel connected. And certainly some of the larger organizations actually have an issue with how they build it in, but by starting small and kind of working through, sitting down and trying to work out what you can offer and what you'd like to offer, and also what your team would like to offer, it will return tenfold, right? That there's certainly kind of evidence to suggest that it's good for business to have some kind of purpose built within. But one of the easiest ways is through partnership, and so looking at what some of the who you'd like to partner, what kind of area you would like to kind of support, and then kind of investigating strong partnerships and working through some challenges. We are doing a lot, but certainly we wouldn't be able to do as much without some of our great partnerships that we have existing that kind of make sure they purchase all of our soap, that we can help, and then share our message and share the vision. It's about us also making the partners the heroes as well, making sure that they have amazing stories to share with their tenants or with their people. So it's kind of right that an easy one first up is partnerships. It's great and I have no problem, and it's easy for us to go to people to say, hey, we'd like to partner, would you be interested in? Not many people say no, like we don't really want to partner with you, but it's having that access to those brains. One of the challenges that we have is, we're a social enterprise. We're very much kind of business first. How do we kind of do really good business? But we're also quite small. We also don't have the skill set. We also don't have a lot of the revenue to pay the higher salaries. So, we like to kind of partner with organizations to have the brains, to have the skills in order to kind of get some of that to advance our organization, really.
Yeah, because have you ever come across this? I think there's this sort of pivotal moment 10, 15 years ago when the terminology around social enterprise sort of really starts, becoming something that's in the, public awareness, right, or consciousness. But, there seemed to be, at least at the outset, some criticism as well. People kind of going, oh, well, it should just be charity. You should, it should just be philanthropy. Like how can you, pretend to, like, are you profiteering here? Like what? Yeah, I know you're not, right? Like, but
but it's a good question.
How do you counter that or deal with that skepticism?
Well, at all levels, right? So we can go to a meeting and people think, oh, you're a charity, therefore, can you really actually deliver? And so there's often, and what I love brand, and it's really important that things that we do are premium, not to be fancy, but we donate lots of products to women's shelters. We want to make sure that the product gets donated is a premium product. I want them to feel amazing when they use our shampoo, for instance. And so we do a lot of work on making sure we have a premium quality. And then we also get, you guys are a social enterprise. How come it looks too shiny for a social enterprise? Actually, there's a lot of kind of confusion in the market around what is a charity, what is a social enterprise. Indeed, in Australia, there's no legal entity that's actually a social enterprise. You can be a for-profit or not-for-profit or whatever, and still call yourself a social enterprise. There are companies that audit you and kind of allow you to say, or you can say you're registered with social traders, which we are, and they go through our books to make sure that we are a social enterprise while we're saying that. So they're really good entities to have that kind of support behind you. That's independent. We're audited independently, but there's certainly a lot of kind of confusion in the market around what is a charity, and what is a social enterprise, and also I'm certainly often out there talking about our impact. But one of the things that we've learned early on is really lead with the product. Good people will come to us first because because of our cause. They might relate to that cause, or when they might want to choose us because we're doing good. But they certainly won't come back unless it's a good service, or a good quality product. The catering's, delivered on time. It's delicious. All of those kind of things. We really have to be product first, and just kind of push through those stereotypes or those kind of beliefs that people have. And it's also because, like history, that a lot of people going into this sector aren't business focused. And even me, I kind of went into the sector because I was heart led. Like I want to do this. I never kind of dreamed we would be here 5 years ago when we first started it. It's just kind of, just kind of I've just pushed through really. But people go into this game, they're not necessarily business focused, and therefore don't relate as well to business contracts, to delivering a quality product, all of those kind of KPIs that a standard EO business would actually look through the lens of. And so that's kind of my kind of take. And I think while we've been able to secure some really great contracts and build some really good relationships, because it's really about treat us like I hate it when I go to a meeting and they're, oh, don't worry, you're a social enterprise, you're a charity. Actually, no, treat me like every other supplier that you have, and put us up against your other suppliers. We want to outperform first, and then share you some amazing stories that we've been able to do. So, believe me, we haven't always got it right. It is a challenge when you have more people in the kitchen that have high trauma backgrounds, potentially have never worked in a kitchen before. It's actually, mate, it's a bit like Cool Runnings, the Jamaican bobsled. Like we're literally, when the women first start, super keen and really keen to get involved, but just kind of have no real skills. And so it actually, I couldn't do it now. Something the empathy that the chefs have and the patience that the chefs have in order to build that person up. But mate, when it works, when you see the transformational impact that you can have when someone actually starts believing themselves. And we say what we're doing is not rocket science, right? All we're doing is giving someone a job at the end of the day. But what we're actually doing is believing in that person. And typically people who have experienced domestic violence have been told they're worthless for such a long period of time, they really start to believe that. So even at the interview stage, there's no eye contact. We really have to look through that and say, the only prerequisite we have to work in the team is that you want to re-enter the workplace. And despite, how you are right now, if you want to re-enter, then we'll give you a job. And it's literally working from there. In the first 4 weeks, it's quite slow. But when that kind of, hey, I've got this happen, it's amazing. The posture changes, the outlook, they're giving me a hard time when they're walking past, that kind of beautiful, beautiful thing. And the program actually lasts us 6 months. So we employ 8 women every 6 months. And so, and at the end of that 6 month employment, or about month 4, we start working with some of our partners to move them through into another job so we can do it all again. Again, how do we have more social impact? Is by moving the women through and then into other roles, full-time roles. And while they're with us, it's paid above award wages. And then we move them into the next role and do it all again. It's an expensive way to do business, but, I really think, and we're not there yet. We have a goal in 3 years to actually employ 60 women through our programs every year on year, just to kind of push people through. And to get that, we need a revenue target of about 18 million through the soaps and lotions business. We're certainly not there yet, but I think with the contracts that we're working on and the kind of people that we're talking to, I don't think it's too far off.
There's so much here that is just, beautifully counterintuitive and sort of goes against, traditional business wisdom. I mean, just from an entrepreneurial perspective, people might think, it's so expensive to recruit, to engage, to train up, and then you've got all this intellectual property that goes out the door. And you guys are just taking a wonderfully counterintuitive approach to that, to saying, hey, we're kind of the first, we're the first transition point to build up confidence, to help transform, to give people some skills, and then to sort of nurture them to the next level. We're sitting here with Rob Caslick on the Scaling Impact podcast, sponsored and curated by EO Sydney. And I'm just mesmerized and also very heartened by this conversation so far, Rob. in everything you describe. You talk about the value of partnership here, and I'm curious, just from that sort of premium branding, which is again is sort of counterintuitive but makes so much sense. Which chefs have you partnered with? Do you actively partner with? And where can EO members and entrepreneurs around the world find out more information about you guys and start also supporting your cause?
Yeah, cool. Just through the website, mate, toogood.com.au. But we work with all the top chefs. So it was quite funny. So when we first started, there's a publication, Sydney Morning Herald do a good food event each year where they award all of the top restaurants state by state with chef's hats. So similar to a Michelin, but we have chef's hats. So, but basically, it's the creme de la creme of all of the chefs. And during the first year, actually, they launched a new award, Food for Good. And I was lucky enough to get the Food for Good award. And the next day, the editor of Good Food emailed all of the top chefs who won awards last night and said, congratulations on advancing the culinary landscape of New South Wales. But she CC'd everyone, not BCC'd. And all of a sudden, I had all of the top chefs' emails, and they knew that I won the award last night. So I was emailing Peter Gilmore and Neil Perry and Kylie Kwong and Matt Moran. Oh, by the way, we're doing a small thing where, could you give us a recipe? And all of a sudden, when you have this kind of top, the three hat chefs saying yes, everyone wants to be involved. So as a result, and quite humbly, even through, the tough, COVID years, all of the chefs have been super supportive to us by simply giving us a great recipe that we can use and do a buy one, give one, or helping us out with our Too Good cookbook, which we launched end of last year. Which features all the top chefs in Australia, but even some chefs in the UK as well. Yotam and Nigella has contributed. So I guess chefs are already quite open and generous, but they've certainly been very supportive to us. But yeah, it's very important to us that it's a premium, premier, not to have ego, but simply to demonstrate to that person at shelter that we believe you're absolutely worthy of the absolute best that we can. And so that's kind of what the story is.
Well, I guess also just in terms of a business building exercise as well. I mean, not only personal relationships, but also the network effect, and then of course, as a fairly young business, it does give you the nous and people pay attention. I mean, there's plenty of foodies in Australia, and some of which probably work for major organisations that are thinking about their philanthropic spend, or even people in events that might be thinking about how do we cater for this conference or this management retreat or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, 100%. And that's kind of where when we ask how do people help, really, we would much rather you engage with us and purchase our products, or we also hands open and candles where we actually make the candles ourselves, employ the women to make the candles. So there's lots of things that we can do and partner with, but it's really about kind of feeding the machine or feeding the business so that we can get that revenue, and then it's more sustainable for us to continue to doing great works. But when we have the top chefs, and even we do some work with some fashion houses and some other on the product side as well, it does allow you to get some really great partnerships on board. And some of the larger partners that we've had certainly kind of look to, well, they must be good if Kylie Kwong and Neil Perry are working for them. We want to be associated with that brand too. So it really helped us to establish a premium service, or at least kind of look like behind the scenes we're all over the shop, but in front of the camera and talking with some of the big corporates, we can sort of put on a good game.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we are talking to Rob about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and in particular goal number 1, which is of course no poverty. I just want to throw out a few quick stats about why the work you're doing is so important. And COVID-19, according to the United Nations, has led to the first rise in extreme poverty in a generation. And an additional 119 to 124 million people were pushed back into extreme poverty in 2020 during the first year of the pandemic. We see that the global poverty rate is projected to be 7% in 2030, and we're missing the target of eradicating poverty. Of course, this is a massive burning issue. You guys are certainly helping person by person. What do you think when you sort of look into the year 2030? if Too Good is able to scale its impact, how would you like to see this model evolving, touching even more people? What do you see as, the biggest opportunities and the biggest challenges on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, it's so growth really for us, like it's similar to any business. So as we grow, we want to have more impact. But I certainly see the opportunity to not only kind of donate more meals, but also upskill people and give people that financial security. It was really interesting. Often when we employ someone for the first time in a long time, their outlook on life actually starts to change. They can to make better financial decisions around looking after their family, around 1 in 10 Australians are actually below the poverty line. So there's certainly a lot of work that we can do in our country as well about, and we like to think of employment first. How do we employ more people? And it's interesting when we talk about our goals and our future, yes, there's a revenue target, but we're very much focused on the number of people that we can employ. And that's kind of the whole of organization. So how can we employ internally? So when roles come up within our organization, how do we, like our drivers, for instance, a graduate from the program, we have hired people full-time in the kitchen when we need them. And so how do we as an organization grow and employ more people in our organization, but also encourage more people and get more people jobs so they can make better financial decisions? But certainly by 2030, I certainly hope that Too Good itself is national, but also, the opportunity to talk to you and the more that we're out there sharing our message that this is possible, that this is how we've done it, and hope that other people start to do it. Like if we're an organization of our size and we're employing 60 people a year, imagine what some of the larger organizations can do themselves. And so really try to help to combat this SDG goal.
And it's, again, counterintuitive and illustrious that you guys think of headcount as a sort of a feather in the cap when so many other organizations are thinking artificial intelligence and robotics and outsource the menial, and you got fully automated hamburger restaurants in being launched in the United States, for example. You guys are actually thinking about how do we make an impact on the humans beyond universal basic income and all the rest.
I also think that we're not there yet. We did get some federal government funding based on the program. So up until 2 years ago, all of the women that we had employed in our program were over 50, primarily because the fastest growing cohort of someone become homeless in Australia is a woman over 50. Now that's kind of that blew my mind when I heard that. So we made the community, actually, we can do something about this. This is our mums, our aunties who are at the highest risk of being homeless. And so we started to employ women over 50. And then the government actually said, well, if we measure what you're doing, we can give you some funds to measure what you're doing. And then how do we scale this? So certainly, while it's absolutely our number one target for employing the number of people, I also do think potentially that there is a business model in that, because we are taking people off government assistance, we are taking people off government housing and putting them into on the private rental market, and there's also lots of evidence out there to suggest that people are less likely to access government services, and so there certainly could be potentially some more government initiatives around working with organisations like us that are actually saving as a return on investment for government. And so I am interested in exploring kind of what that looks like and how do we kind of go to 600 women, right? And how does that kind of look at with some government support? So while the idea on employment is 100% around impact, I kind of love the idea. I loved what Jeff Bezos has done in as far as turning some of his biggest cost centers into profit-making machines. And we're certainly not Amazon, right? But I love that kind of thought around, yes, it's cost us $500,000 a year for this program, but we're actually saving the government, no doubt, $750,000. And so what kind of investment might that be for a government in order to look? So I think there could be something in there. I certainly, I guess I'm just shooting from the hip a little bit here, but I do think there's opportunity for more people to be involved and to look at that through a different lens and how they might help something like this scale. But we've certainly got to be out there first and demonstrating. We do a lot of work on impact reporting and proving that the program actually works. And we at the moment, actually, it's a little bit skewed. We're at a 96% chance of someone actually finishing our program and getting a job, certainly helped by the employment market at the moment. And that's obviously not that, we usually start with 10 and end up with 8 go through the program. So there's certainly people that drop off. But if you complete the program, it's at 80. It's at, I think, no, 92%. Previously, before COVID, we were about 85, between 80 and 85. So we can certainly demonstrate that the program works. It's now trying to work, getting to work at scale, and we do a lot of work on that reporting.
Yeah, amazing. Because of course, at the end of the day, we all wear our hearts on our sleeves, and your story and your brand and what you're doing sort of, it really pulls on the heartstrings, but of course we also need to pull on the purse strings at times as well. And I know how important reporting is, just to convince and even for people to post-rationalize their decisions and their intuitions to support the cause. It's also, of course, great when you can show that and show the Aussie taxpayers that what you guys are doing is actually saving the government money, and that our tax dollars are actually being utilized towards something that's really worthwhile. So love the fact that you're doing. Is that something we can learn more about on your website again in terms of the reporting, or something that you've shared elsewhere?
Oh no, so we share it with all of our partners. So and happy to share some of the measurement tools that we're using and how we measure and all of that kind of stuff. We don't actually, on the ACNC website, we report in on our we do a lot of reporting through that. But as far as the success of the programs, we don't communicate that through the website yet. We need to do better there around telling those stories. But certainly with our bigger partners who buy a lot of our products, we share those reporting skills, those reporting metrics.
I love how this is baked in from the beginning, and it's almost like the business came second beyond the cause. And I know there's plenty of EOers who are dipping their toes into the oceans of possibility when it comes to being purpose-led and sort of retrofitting it in a sense into their businesses, or maybe even reconnecting with why they started their businesses. Have you seen any examples of other businesses, either in your entrepreneurial journey or elsewhere, where you kind of go, yep, that's a business that's really, kind of, I call it retrofit. Maybe it's reconnecting with their original purpose in a way that you found heartening, or that really makes sense?
Not really, but only to say, we're certainly still learning and changing ourselves. We actually have two entities. We have a social enterprise, essentially a for-profit company, and we have an Australian charity, a registered charity with DGR status. And so even this afternoon, we're lucky to have Boston Consulting Group coming with us and trying to work out these two structures, because as both entities kind of grow and things move around, we certainly have governance, and we have a Minter Ellison doing governance between the two, and a board of directors. All of those kind of things are sorted. But more to say that we're still learning as we go as well. Like it's, we are growing fairly quickly, and that often has lots of growing pains. And so it's really important to us also that governance is really strong, but also we use the two entities to have greater impact. So, we're working at the moment with the BCG on how to kind of use our structures better in order to have greater impact or make them serve each other. So we certainly are still in a bit of a discovery phase ourselves around, what the two entities actually look like behind the scenes, and making sure that number one, governance is always strong, but also how do we actually use those so it makes things a bit easier for us to manage. I guess we certainly have made many mistakes, and similar to all of the values of EO. I'm certainly happy if someone's going through this or someone's interested to reach out to me direct and set up a time to discuss. I bloody love this space, and so if there's anything I can do and share, I'm happy to share a plethora of mistakes and balls ups that we've had with the audience. So please feel free to reach out.
I'm going to do a few sort of quick fire question and a cap nod to Tim Ferriss. I know I'm going to test you a little bit. Tim Ferriss, kudos and respect, and a little cap nod to you for inspiring some of these questions. And we're borrowing from greatness here. So, one apparent failure or mistake, and that you turned around into a potential success.
So one failure that turned it into a success. I think certainly the biggest failure that we often have is business over impact. So I'm out there saying yes to all this sort of stuff, and that putting too much pressure on the team. I think what we had to really hire was our first hire in HR was a social a social worker that really kind of helped kind of set the boundaries and make sure that the business grew in line with the program. So getting that kind of structure up, we kind of failed early, and by kind of failing and certainly reflection on that, we were able to hire and kind of move that around to make sure we kind of protected both entities and have someone, that sat between both entities is to protect the women.
What purchase of $100 or less has made the most positive impact to you or your business? And feel free to share specifics like brands and model, where you found it and all that.
Well, I tell you what, so LifeWise, I purchased Lifespan by Dr. David Sinclair, and I'm just hooked on the thought that aging as a disease and how do we kind of work on aging as a disease. And I think that's certainly had an impact on me and how I approach life. So I think that was, I think, $28. So that was certainly an impact on me.
There you go. To be found online or in a bookstore near you. Speaking of books, what's a book that you've given most as a gift and why?
I gave, it's not something that I do a lot of, but I've started to do. So a new hire will often get a book from me. I gave, in fact, the guy that we first hired as a social worker, he's now looking after our culture and social impact. And so I gave him the Netflix kind of book, not for, we're certainly not Netflix, and there's certainly lots, that I don't believe in everything, but I love the idea. One of the things I dislike is kind of getting in a position, okay, this is how we're going to do things because this is how it's done. And I love the opportunity to challenge that and to actually think about, here's a company that have thrown everything out, whether it's successful or not, they've thrown everything out and really viewed things through their lens. And so I gave that Netflix book to Alex to kind of say, well, I'd love you to read this, and just to kind of open your mind into, what could be possible. Let's not go down the path of being a regular organization that, does things because we need to, but let's view things through our values and approach it that way.
If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, metaphorically speaking, getting a message out to millions of people or billions of people, what would it say and why?
I'm hoping for these things. I'll probably think of something in the show that I'm like, so what would it say? I mean, we've had a great partnership with a big billboard company, and so they've put us out there on billboards before. And the first thing that we went to was really some beautiful images of the women that we've worked with, and some of the messages that they shared while their time. And so really for us, that was our opportunity, and that's what we chose to do, just to really give precedence to the person that, the quote in particular was, "You love me back to life," and that was Linda, and that was a beautiful image of her with that kind of quote, and then our logo. And the reason really is certainly, we need to be product first. We want people to come to us for our good products, but that is why we do things. To see Linda kind of go out there and smash it and have those kind of statements is really for me what I love to communicate.
Yeah, cool. What's one? So the whole billboard thing is totally a realistic thing for you guys. Then that's good to know.
Yeah. No, I mean, let's do this.
What's one of the best or the most worthwhile investments you've ever made?
Perhaps not the best investment. What comes to mind is our team lunch. So, every day at 12:30, the organisation stops to have a meal. And, we're lucky we have a commercial kitchen, right? So it's easier for the chef to whip something up for 25 people. But it's fundamentally the core of who we are. Since it's a soup kitchen, that's bringing people around the table. But it has so many other impacts around inclusion and equity and just that kind of stopping and sharing the same meal and asking how you're doing. And it is an investment because it does cost a lot to put on a meal every day, and also stop for 45 minutes to share and sit down. But that's kind of an investment that we make as an organization, and it's certainly paid back tenfold. The amount of, when we do our staff surveys, I think if we stopped it now, there would be a riot. But certainly that's our investment, and it's paid back tenfold, in my opinion.
In the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
What came first to mind was my judgment of others. I really, when we first hire, like I'm always out there, trying to share the message of the people that we work with in order to, to communicate what's actually going on there. It happens to everyone, that kind of thing. But I also have to check my judgments. Like I often go and have, a judgment of someone, early, and 9 times out of 10 I'm proven wrong, right? But I think it's really allowed me to check that, or at least acknowledge that that's happened. And so Too Good really taught me that around, checking our judgments and our stereotypes that we have. And I think that's one of the many benefits that Too Good's had for me, and it's something that I've kind of really worked on and improved.
In the last 5 years, what are some distractions or other things that you've become better at saying no to?
Well, I think last year we had the year of the focus. And so prior to last year, I was all over the place. And while I'm very much kind of a shiny project, let's kind of have a look at that. It was a COVID year where we were trying to bring in any kind of revenue. So we were kind of jumping all over the place. But as of last year, we already wrote our strategy down on a page. And I've been much better at that. I'm still allowed to have a couple of side projects. We're bringing out this really cool ocean plastic dispenser soon, but I've certainly been better at saying no to things outside my lane, or like the women's shelter I mentioned before, being other teams that would be better off dealing with this than myself, like a builder and an actual designer to work with a shelter. So I have been certainly better at kind of going off strategy.
You give so much energy, there's lots of love embedded into your business model, so much positive impact that you're scaling. Any rituals that you have to just make sure that you're energized and look after yourself and invest in some self-care as well that you can recommend?
Yeah, I do a lot of self-care. Like I certainly struggle, and last year I struggled with some mental health, and so I certainly have taken a lot more energy, and hence the David Sinclair book around preventing aging, but really kind of a better focus on my own mental health and meditation and exercise. And I certainly kind of had a goal last year to do a triathlon, and that kind of gave me a lot of focus to make sure I was doing positive things for mental health. And I want to continue that this year. So I do a lot of meditating and swimming and running and now cycling as well, which I've had to learn to do.
We're into the final innings here. Any recommendations or advice for entrepreneurs thinking about the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and how to kind of go about picking one or two or three of them that they can really build into their business model? Any advice or calls to arms here?
100%. And start small is the first thing, and then you'll be surprised how these things grow. I mean, it is addictive. And I personally find it addictive to once you get started, the kind of the positive impact that you can have, what you can see you can do. But start small and really look within your organization. Like there's certainly lots of opportunities, the whole entrepreneur thing. There's certainly opportunities to do great work within any organization, no matter what organization you have, but just kind of finding the skill sets you have and applying them. And, you might not necessarily be able to focus on a goal yourself within your organization, but you can absolutely partner with one and really help an organization that's purely focused on those and help them increase their impact as well. So there's certainly plenty of opportunities to work towards these goals collectively. And how amazing would it be if there wasn't poverty?
Amazing. Rob Caslick from Too Good, thank you so much for joining us on Scaling Impact here, hosted by EO Sydney. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Anders. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Scaling Impact. Make sure you subscribe to the show in your podcatcher, and we'd be super grateful if you leave us a great review. For more information about Scaling Impact, the Entrepreneurs Organisation, or our work on sustainable innovation, please check out EO Sydney online. We would appreciate if you can take a moment to share the podcast with a friend or a colleague and help build the movement. We hope that what we learn together on scaling impact can help us all build a sustainable future for ourselves and our children. See you in the near future.